How's it going, everybody? So as 2024 is slowly coming to a close, we have some more end of the year lists. I've already done my top 10 worst movies of 2024. If you haven't checked that out yet, I highly recommend it. But this time around, we're going to be a little bit more positive here and talk about the best movies I've seen in 2024. Of course, this is just my personal list. I'd love to know yours down below, so share your top 10 best movies of 2024. Without further ado, though, let's get right into my top 10. Coming in at number 10, I have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Honestly, it is kind of a bummer that the film isn't talked about as much these days, but I was really impressed at just how seamlessly this film carried on the Apes franchise after the Caesar trilogy wrapped up so perfectly. Thematically, I felt like the story here was very rich, framing a coming-of-age style journey with a fascinating perspective on legacy, and the information being passed down from generation to generation possibly being twisted. The film also has stellar action set pieces. Weta continues to blow my mind each and every film on the capability of what they can do, bringing these characters to life with VFX. It's especially evident when you watch the Blu-ray and you watch the version where they're just in the mocap suits and you see just how much they do. Coming in at number 9, I have Transformers 1. Probably in part because I've been a lifelong fan is why I love this movie so much, but I also just feel like collectively, society, we kind of failed Transformers 1 because this movie was not marketed very well. Then it ended up being one of the best things the Transformers franchise has ever delivered. Despite my reservations going in about an origin story, Transformers 1 is an excellent, enriching way to delve into the origin for these iconic characters, and all around it's just a great adventure filled with so many great laughs and just as many big emotional beats, exploring the early years, the friendship between Optimus and Megatron and how it shifts into a rivalry. The final act of this film, especially once they do truly become Optimus Prime and Megatron, culmination of emotions up to this point and the epic action sequences that follow, all of those elements are perfectly done. I just wish that this movie was marketed better. The marketing for this movie was honestly kind of atrocious, and I feel like that is a big part of why this movie was not as successful. I do really hope that we get a follow-up to this in some regard, just because it was such a good movie that was overlooked by many. Coming in at number 8, I have The Wild Robot. If you want to talk about a movie that I saw this year that genuinely surprised me at how much it would just hit me in the feelings, it's definitely The Wild Robot. Besides the wonderful animation on display in The Wild Robot, the storytelling here is where I feel like the film shines the best. It's an earnest, emotional journey with so much heart centered around great themes around parenthood, kindness, and attempting to coexist. That's beautifully done. Plus, I have to commend them on the fact that this film does tackle some heavier subject matter that I feel like most modern movies don't really do that much anymore. Of course, DreamWorks has put out a lot of great films over the years, but personally, I feel like The Wild Robot might be up there as far as some of the best that they've ever put out. Coming in at number 7, I have Conclave. Once I finally got around to checking out Conclave, it reminded me a lot of movies that we don't get as often, you know, the classic slow burn style thrillers. So much about Conclave I found to be so genuinely engaging, how the film weaves together this fascinating peek behind the curtain into choosing a new pope with so many interesting twists and turns throughout the story that only hook you in further the deeper you go. Wrapped up in all this tension, also, there are some fantastic gripping performances, particularly from Ralph Fiennes, who I feel like is the major frontrunner here for Best Actor at the Academy Award. Coming in at number 6, I have The Substance. Because I'm a huge horror fan, you know I love me some good body horror, and The Substance for sure delivers on some nasty body horror. The gruesome visuals are top tier. There's an inherent fun, campy quality to some of the film. What truly sets apart The Substance compared to a lot of horror films in the genre is what the story here is trying to tell. The commentary is blistering through Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley's phenomenal performances, the frustration surrounding being your own worst critic about your appearance, the male gaze, and ageism in general within the entertainment industry, leading to some big emotional beats. The layers to the story on top of the gruesome body horror is why I feel like The Substance resonates deeper than most horror films this year. Coming in at number 5, I have Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. In a day and age where we get so many different prequels and sequels that inevitably end up feeling pretty unnecessary, I think George Miller did a phenomenal job as far as giving us an origin story for Furiosa. Anya Taylor-Joy perfectly personifies Furiosa. Even without a significant amount of dialogue, you feel the emotion, the rage, and her clear-cut desire for revenge against Dementus. Speaking of him, I gotta admit, I was genuinely impressed by Chris Hemsworth's performance. This is the second time on my top 10 list. I honestly didn't know he had this type of performance in him, portraying this completely downright evil scoundrel of an antagonist. And in usual Mad Max fashion, George Miller brings it here with the amazing style of action that's so exhilarating and awesome to watch. Now, I never expected Furiosa to come close in quality to Mad Max Fury Road, but for the most part, I felt like this was a very nice complementary piece to that film. Coming in at number 4, I have Wicked. Now, I went into Wicked having not seen the musical, and I came out of this movie pretty much adoring everything about it. The film embodies so much about what I love about a good musical. You've got gorgeous, elaborate production design that fully immerses you in the world. So many songs in this are so infectiously catchy. There are so many songs I've put in my Spotify playlist after the movie and have listened to them over and over again, like Dancing Through Life, Popular, No One Mourns the Wicked, Defying Gravity, of course. Also, I just think the story in Wicked has that right amount of emotion mixed in within the fun. Both Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande kill it here. I adore the highs and lows of the bond that Glinda and Elphaba form throughout due to how incredible they are. Are there some questionable lighting choices in certain sequences that has had the internet up in arms? All of a sudden, everybody on the internet are expert color graders. Sure, some of those sequences do look pretty weird, but besides those few sequences that are few and far between, I do feel like the movie deserves a lot of the praise it's getting. Coming in at number 3, I have Longlegs. Firstly, I gotta say, I felt like Longlegs probably had the greatest marketing campaign out of any movie that came out this year. It's pretty much the complete opposite of Transformers 1, where the Longlegs marketing built up the suspense, intrigue, and hype so much, some of which surely did end up impacting the film negatively. Some people probably felt like the movie was overhyped because of the intense marketing. And if you didn't like Longlegs, I perfectly understand why. But I'm someone that loves Oz Perkins' approach to horror. For me, Longlegs effectively personifies anxiety-driven psychological terror, meticulously ramping up your anxiety as the story unweaves itself with every skin-crawling moment following the investigation Micah Monroe goes on. And throughout, it's interwoven with these unsettling performances from both Alicia Witt and Nicolas Cage. Each of them are incredibly unsettling, but in far different ways. By this point in his career, Nicolas Cage has kind of become synonymous with unhinged performances, and yet his performance here as Longlegs is otherworldly horrifying. He's visually grotesque, but also disturbing and deeply unhinged. It's such a captivating performance that despite it being so creepy, you can't look away anytime he's on screen. I was very tempted to put on my Longlegs shirt for this review, but I didn't want to give away that it was going to be on my list at all. I was very excited I got to wear the shirt when I met Alicia Witt a couple months back at Monster Mania. She was so amazing to meet in person, and she was so down to do a Longlegs pose for my photo, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Coming in second place, I have Nosferatu. Technically, this is the most recent film to make my top 10 list, but I'm still so impressed by what Eggers was able to explore here with this remake. It's a perfectly haunting yet beautiful take on such a classic story that continues to linger on with you the longer you think about it. From a visual standpoint, the movie is mesmerizing, only topped by one other film this year. It's just completely gorgeous. I also love how Robert Eggers expertly recreates gothic imagery, enhancing further the macabre feeling of darkness surrounding these characters with Count Orlok's presence. Something else impressive is the fact that Bill Skarsgård ended up being on my top 10 movies of the year and also my worst movies of the year. He was in the best for Nosferatu, and he was in the worst for The Crow. In a year where we had so many great ensembles, this is one of my personal favorites, and yet another year where horror reigns supreme, I felt like this was the best horror film of the entire year. Tyler from the future here, I totally forgot to mention that I also, in the meantime, got the Nosferatu popcorn bucket. This bucket is probably one of my favorite ones I've ever got. I mean, there were a lot of great popcorn buckets throughout this year. I have the Dune Part 2 bucket in my living room as well, but I just had to show this off because I just got it. Before I unveil my top movie of 2024, I do have a couple honorable mentions that I do want to talk about, which are Challengers, Inside Out 2, Anora, First Omen, Gladiator 2. There are only a handful of movies that I really wanted to see, but I just was not able to. One of those being The Brutalist. It is literally not showing anywhere around me. I tried. It's only being shown right now in theaters in New York and LA, and I am not near either of them. Same goes for Sing Sing. I really wanted to see Sing Sing, but it's not showing anywhere around me. Not noticing a pattern here, it seems like the major problem here is A24 and how they distribute their movies. But coming in at number 1, I have Dune Part 2. I've seen a lot lot of different movies before Dune and after Dune, but something about Dune Part 2, every single time I've ever watched it, it's just always given me that buzz that has never been replicated. Part 1 of Dune laid the groundwork for Denis Villeneuve to completely elevate everything to epic proportions with this sequel. It's blockbuster filmmaking done right. Visually, thanks to Greg Fraser's immaculate cinematography, it's one of the most stunning films in recent memory. Coupling that with Part 2 weaving together a gripping narrative of belief, power, and destiny through the rise of Paul Atreides. Out of all the ensembles this year, Part 2 had my personal favorite. Timothée Chalamet just takes everything next level here as Paul. Same goes for Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, Florence Pugh. And then there's also Austin Butler delivering a great villain performance as Fade Rotha. It's a shame it doesn't seem like Dune Part 2 is going to be getting a lot of big major awards recognition with award season coming up. But to me, at least, I think it's the best movie that came out of 2024 overall. And there you have it. That is my ranking of the top 10 best movies of 2024. It's always fun talking movies on the channel with you guys. So like I said earlier, make sure you share your rankings down below. What are your top 10 movies that you've seen this year? I'm sure everybody's going to have a very different list. We're probably going to have some in common, some very different. I'm sure there's probably going to be somebody that disagrees with some of the picks on my list, and that's perfectly okay. As always, thank you guys so much for checking out the videos. 2024 was yet another great year for the channel. Each and every year that passes, it seems like the channel is doing better and better, and genuinely, I do appreciate that so much. I never expected anybody to really watch anything I put out, so it's always kind of surreal at just how many of you want to talk about movies with me on the channel. With that being said, make sure you leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.